Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to Shootout. We are back again today, and we're going to talk about Chelsea. I know that you've seen Younes and I absolutely bark on about Chelsea Arsenal pretty much the whole week, but as a duo, as a couple, I guess you could say, we thought we'd come back and add a few more points in, reiterate things you've already said, and look forward to what could start to become a very exciting season for the Chelsea. This is one of two videos that are going to be coming your way today. We're going to do a roundup of the Champions League games, which unfortunately, I didn't watch any of them. I saw the highlights, of course, but we're going to talk about that in a later video today. But Younes, mate, as a Chelsea fan, first of all, how the bloody hell are you? And are you as excited as I am?
Yeah, there's something in the air, isn't there? Like a little sprinkle.
Yeah.
I'm good. Happy days. And from a Chelsea perspective, yeah, you know, the way that we let that result go against Arsenal stung, but there were positives to take from it. And you know, the wins that we picked up before the Arsenal game, and then the positives to take from the Arsenal game, I'd like to think, like I said, there's something in the air and there's a little change happening. So I'm optimistic.
The wind is shifting. Would you say, like, for me, it's been a bit different because as the week's gone on, my frustration about the result and the game itself has kind of gone upwards. And I guess from when I watched your video on your channel and what you've just said there, that air of change in the air in a positive sense, would you say that as the week's gone on for you, you've kind of become a bit happier about it, but you were frustrated at first?
Oh yeah, I was fuming at first, and I said it on the watch along. I said, look, at 2-0, if this finishes 2-2, I'm gonna flip, and then lo and behold, it finishes 2-2, and in the way that it does, you know, if you had told me we'd get a draw before the game, and like I said, if we were to draw, it's not the end of the world. So it's actually a decent result against a team like Arsenal. But when you look at the context of the game and the way it went down, we were more in control. We were better in terms of the grasp on the game. And up until 74 minutes, we had that game in the palm of our hands. So when you consider that, that's where it stings with the mistake that we made and just throwing it away when we didn't have to throw it away. It wasn't the 2-2 where, you know, we had to claw and really, really try hard to get that draw. It was a case where we had it in our hands and we just let it go. So that's what hurts. But at the end of the day, as I said, there were positives to take from it. And it's definitely a much better change than how we were playing prior to the Brighton game, if you remember, when things were just going left, right and centre. So, yeah, hopefully we're on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, it was, I mean, the Brighton game, for example, the Brighton game that we won in the Cup, I think what we've seen throughout all of those, the four games that we're talking about here are the Brighton game, the Fulham game, the Burnley game, and then, of course, the Arsenal game as well. I think for me, the biggest thing that I've seen is the little tactical nuance that we knew that Pochettino was going to have to take a bit of time to work into this Chelsea team. The little things, opponent by opponent, the way that Pochettino is setting us out to play a certain way against certain opponents is becoming more and more evident game by game. I think Pochettino looked at Arteta's Arsenal and thought, right, we have got three midfielders here, Caicedo, Gallagher, Enzo, who, between the three of them, can absolutely win Chelsea the battle in the middle of the park. And then I said before the game, I was like, well, I think we've got all the capacity to be able to play out from the back. It's just, is Sanchez good enough with the ball at his feet? Can he kick it to the right person at the right place at the right time? And for 70 minutes, we absolutely nullified that Arsenal press, which is kind of like a two-layered press where the attackers and then the fullbacks kind of like overlap to make the pitch as wide as possible. I think Chelsea dealt with it amazingly. And then it all just comes back to like individual moments of averageness, borderline shockingly bad madness. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think for me, leaving that game, it was more of a case of, by the end of it, I was like, thank goodness we didn't lose. Because if we'd have lost, to capitulate and give away a 2-0 lead when you're playing that well, to then go back to like the Chelsea we've almost got used to, which is losing at Stamford Bridge, I think that could have been every little step that we've taken to get to that result, the result, not necessarily the performance, would have been completely undone. So for that reason, I just left the game thinking, phew. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know what? You mentioned that. I mean, if we had lost, oh man, all guns would have shot off at that point, man. It would have been all guns blazing on just the capitulation, because that would have been truly unacceptable. But it's the emotion, isn't it? And it's the immediate reaction that you get after you let go of a result like that. It felt like 2 points dropped. It felt like a loss. So now, after a few days, we look at it for what it is and for what it's worth. 2-2 draw against Arsenal. Yeah, we would have taken that before. But again, those mistakes that we see at the end of, maybe you could say, lack of focus, lack of concentration, lack of maturity, perhaps. Hopefully those things don't transpire again. And those are things that you can suppress and deal with game after game and learn how to adapt to. And this Brentford game coming up is going to be key. So, when you look at it from that perspective, the one good thing that I want to say is that it's nice to see that Poch is tactically flexible. Because we stress about having to play, a certain brand of football, and we want to be in control of games on the ball. But it's nice to know that we can control a game off the ball and allow the other teams to have the ball if we really want, and still nullify them, because I think it's important to be that flexible between attack and defence. And it resembles the DNA that we are accustomed to over the last 20 odd years, where if we want to just, grind out a result and control games off the ball, we can do that. But if we want to take the ball and really do something with it, we can do that too. So it's nice to see that Poch can fluctuate between those two styles. And let's just hope that we don't see those mistakes happen again, where we just very needlessly just throw the game away and not pick up 3 points, because we deserved 3 points, I reckon.
Yeah, no, I think Joey Knight made a really good point actually about Sanchez when it comes to this debate about whether or not he's a good enough goalkeeper for Chelsea. I think when it comes to the kind of errors that we've seen from him so far, these are definitely coachable things that can just one day click for him, where it's okay, I'm not going to make that mistake again. But I think for me, the key two players right now who are absolutely undroppable for Chelsea when it comes to the way that Pochettino can mould the team game by game, opposition by opposition. The two players for me that I think are absolutely beyond key right now for Chelsea, undroppable, are Conor Gallagher and Cole Palmer. I think between those two, we're seeing the balance that the signings that we've made, that people have been is this going to work? Is Caicedo actually a £100 million player? I think it's Gallagher's work that is allowing Caicedo to be the player that we saw at Brighton, to be that for Chelsea, to make that midfield so solid. And I think in terms of the revolutionising, I guess you could say, of our attack comes from this intelligence when it comes to knowing when to run, when to drop, when to come central, from Cole Palmer. Who do you think are the 2 or 3 or 1, whichever player? What do you think right now is Pochettino's biggest weapon when it comes to being able to, game by game, set Chelsea up in a way which favours us getting a positive result? Because that's what we've started to do.
Yeah, we have. And those two players I completely agree with. If you would have asked me, 7 or 8 games ago, I definitely wouldn't have put Gallagher in that bracket. But he looks a transformed man, and I'm really happy for him and for what he's doing and for the way that Poch is using him. He's really, really grown into the role. And he's now doing the things that we've asked him to do alongside the things that he was already doing. We know he's someone that likes to get into the dirty work and the gritty side of the game and the intelligence on the ball, which is what personally I was demanding to see from him, to be able to not waste time in certain positions, in certain spaces, make the correct pass, make the correct run, link up correctly, be quick on your feet, be quick in your thinking. All of a sudden, it's just clicked and he's doing all of this. And testament to the players around him, Cole Palmer included, I'll come to him in a sec, and Pochettino for being able to use him in the correct way. And I think he's enjoying it now. You can see that Connor's really, really enjoying the role. And he's become key. You're right, he's elevated the pressure off of a Caicedo and even off of an Enzo. And now, with the ability that those two midfielders have, knowing that oppositions have got to deal with Gallagher too, only helps our cause for the other two midfielders and for alleviating some of that pressure that they've got to deal with. So it's nice to see. Cole Palmer is just, I say this time and time again, he's just a baller. A proper baller. You know, he gets the ball.
He's just so likable, you know what I mean?
Very, very. And for someone that's come from Manchester City at the age that he's come in, you look at and you think he was a bit out of favour at City. Used, but rotationally. And it's nice to see that he's come in and has just been, you know, one of the first names on the team sheet. And the comparison many Chelsea fans, now I want to know if you agree, is it seems like he's the player that we all thought Kai Havertz was going to be. Am I right? That's what I'm hearing by everybody. Do you agree with that?
I think so, but I'd also err on the side of caution a little bit with that, because I think when it comes to making those comparisons, it's obviously easier now to back Cole because he's scoring and to slate Kai because he's at Arsenal and it's easy to dislike him. I actually think in terms of like the way that I would attribute the praise to Palmer comparatively, just back the microphone, to that of Kai Havertz would be actually it's a testament to Maurizio Pochettino, because when you also factor into this, right, Sterling last season was not as good as Sterling this season, period. That are two players that were seemingly surplus to requirements at Manchester City, clearly have so much ability. Cole Palmer is obviously a lot younger. He's more mouldable into a player that a good manager can take, put into a team, and immediately, in this case, make an important part of this Chelsea jigsaw. I would say, instead of like comparing Palmer to Havertz, I'd say, well, Kai Havertz maybe didn't have a good enough manager to be able to offer him the position and the role that Pochettino's been able to give to Cole Palmer. So I think at the minute, yeah, okay, he scored 2 penalties. He's getting assists and everything as well, working incredibly hard for the team, looking like one of the most dangerous players to actually score a goal. I think this is all down to the management. So I think if you'd have put Kai Havertz potentially in this Chelsea team with Pochettino, then I also think Kai Havertz would probably be delivering a lot more than he did from that Champions League final goal until the moment he wasn't a Chelsea player anymore. So I would be... I think maybe I've just like gone into it a bit more than some people would, because it's kind of just like, Cole Palmer is everything that Kai Havertz isn't. Well, yeah, obviously, but like I think that is all down to Pochettino, and the credit needs to go to him.
No, you know what? I agree with that. I think that's one of two answers. I think with Pochettino, like we've just mentioned with Conor Gallagher, the same way he's utilising Cole Palmer is fantastic. I reckon Cole Palmer, though, has this ability where he's reliable and he knows exactly what to do before he even receives the ball, or when he's not with the ball, he knows exactly what to do. I've always stressed, and I was saying this about Kai, and I don't want this to turn into a Kai Havertz video, but when he was at Chelsea and even now at Arsenal, I still think it's the same situation. I think his problem is that he'll never adapt to the Premier League and what it demands. And I think he's just not quick enough to play in the Premier League on a consistent level week in, week out. Cole Palmer looks so far like he is, and I think that's the issue. Now, that's easier for Pochettino to work with, and I think Pochettino's able to get more out of him that way because of it. So Cole Palmer coming into the Chelsea team and being this effective is just a blessing. And if we're talking about other players that you want to mention, I think Sterling deserves credit with the way that he started off the season, you know, pretty poorly, and then had moments like the West Ham game where he looked really, really good, dipped again. And now, just like Conor Gallagher, in these games that we've seen, is just looking quite stable and reliable. So that's good to see. But a player that I want to mention who deserves credit here, we could mention tons of players here, but there's Mudryk and the way that he's really grown into out of his shell, and Cucurella. I don't understand the remontada of Cucurella because it looks unbelievable. But I want to get your thoughts on that. He's looked unreal at right back.
I mean,
and now even at left back, he's just, I don't know what's happened there. But again, Pochettino,
I think it's atmospheric. I think the way that some of these players have just gone from being like, what have we bought these for? These are rubbish, to blimey. All right, now I see it again. It's kind of like the owners are going to be happy because it's like, they all thought we were spending money on trash, but actually, look how these guys
we
are
were
playing
right.
now. I think it's all to do with the atmosphere, bro.
Yeah.
Like when you think about like all of the rumours we heard from Cobham last year, even the players, the way they exit the tunnel onto the field at Stamford Bridge,
was horrific.
like there was just no togetherness. There was no seeming interest from the players. And I think now, those that have left probably were significantly more toxic, some of them potentially, than we even knew about. And I think now when you see all of the players that we've got, and again, Pochettino has to get credit for this because of the atmosphere that he's created. But I just think players like Cucurella were never bad players. They were just playing really flipping badly. And as fans, we need scapegoats to blame and to point fingers at when Chelsea are bad. Now, even when results were poor, you could clearly see that there was still fight. There was still new ideas slowly bleeding in that gets players excited. It's not monotonous football. They're all a good bunch of talented footballers. And now I think we're starting to see that when there is a bit of time with someone giving proper, decent instructions behind them, everybody gets excited about playing again. And I think for Cucurella, it's simply been a case of like, he was frozen out of the water about 6 weeks ago. He's been given opportunities because of various injuries, suspensions and whatever. And because everything is feeling good around the club again, in terms of like that day by day, he can perform because there is an emphasis on it. And he's also got a big chance here to give himself a Chelsea career. Ian Maatsen is not fancied at left back by Poch, and maybe he's absolutely right. Ben Chilwell was never fit. So Marc Cucurella's the guy.
Yeah. And you mentioned that feel-good factor, to be honest. And I think there's one part of that has to be down. We heard recently that Pochettino is going to be really in favour in terms of transfers, in control. And I think that's also part and parcel of what we're seeing now. He looks like a manager fully in control of the situation. Looks like he's got control on the squad, on the way that we're playing. Things are starting to come into fruition. And as you said, with a little bit of time, now there's a couple of these players who were looking, poor before, that have really come out of their shells and are really starting to play well game after game. And you can see the way that we're trying to play. I mentioned earlier in the video that we're looking tactically flexible, which is nice, and we're able to differentiate between attack and defence in certain games against certain opponents. It just looks like Poch is in complete control. And when you hear what the situation is with transfers, and now he has a complete stronghold on the players that we're going to be bringing in or the players that we want out, it's on his terms. And I think that helps. I think that brings stability, and we're starting to see that stability. I hope. We've got really, really tough fixtures coming up. Obviously, we've got Brentford, Blackburn, but then after that, it's Man City, and it's Tottenham away, and it's Newcastle, and that's going to be the test to see where we really, really are. But we were saying that about the Arsenal game. So I really hope that what we're seeing now is only going to continue to grow. And if it does, then we're in a very, very good place, honestly.
No, I absolutely agree. We're stepping in the right direction. I think that's probably a good place to wrap up, actually, Younes, to be fair. We're going to do another video after the Brentford game together. Yep. And we got a busy day of filming today, as we said. Is there any last points that you want to add before we wrap up this one? But I think overall, we've addressed some seriously positive Chelsea business here. Not transfer business, but on the field business, which has been we've been crying out for this for flipping ages. But I am contento. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, no, and look, we can't throw it away by, playing against Brentford, for example, and just putting in a shocking performance. Like, it's all about consistency. That's what I've always said. Playing well one game is great, but in order for us to be the team we want to be again, we have to be consistent. And that means going to Brentford and just swiping them aside. Like, we're at home. We have to get a good win, move on to Blackburn. We can rest players, get a good result against them, hopefully. Progress to the quarterfinal of the Carabao Cup. We can even start talking about winning something this season at that stage. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Why not?
That would give us a really nice taste of winning if we were to get that trophy. So that would be really nice. It happened to us in 2005, if we remember. And I think after that, that's going to be the test. But we can get into that run of games with a nice run of form. And if we do, then we can truly say maybe Chelsea are back.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Stepping stones, and we're not just stepping, we're jumping, we're moving, we're running. We'll catch you in the next video. See you in a bit.